Are you looking to sharpen your budgeting skills? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Budget Couple Podcast, where we talk about life, family, and how to afford it. And now, the Budget Couple themselves, Nate and Danielle.
Welcome to the Budget Couple Podcast. I'm Nate.
And I'm Danielle.
And this week we're going to be answering a listener question about getting their spouse on board with budgeting. But before we dive into that, we want to thank you, those of you that have left a review for this podcast. It really helps grow our listenership, and we greatly appreciate it. And we're going to be sharing some of those reviews here in a little while, in the next couple episodes, just to say thank you for those of you that have left them. If you haven't yet, you can just jump on Apple Podcasts or your podcast player of choice and leave us a review. We would greatly appreciate it. And remember, if you have any questions for us that you'd like us to answer, you can always go to budgetcouple.com and click on that contact form, and we'll answer you as quickly as possible. So let's get on to our listener question here, Danielle.
All right. So as normal, I'll go ahead and read some of this so that we can give you the context, and then we'll dive in with some of our thoughts. My husband and I just purchased our first home. I'm super obsessed about managing our finances. Me too. And I've made my own templates for our budget on Excel. I understand his enthusiasm won't ever match mine, but I don't know how to get him on board. Money burns a hole in his pocket, and we have 2 little boys that we need to ensure are safe and taken care of. I don't know any other way to tell him not to touch the savings without taking away all his access to it, and I think that's unfair because he's an adult and my partner. How do I make going over the budget not necessarily fun, but interesting enough so he understands it? Also, they noted that we have no issues at all paying our bills. Our only debt is the house and 1 car, and we don't max out our cards. But he just doesn't understand the importance of an emergency fund because we'll figure it out. It seems to be his view on that. So thank you for the question. And it was a good one. I think this is probably something that a lot of people struggle with.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think you're alone in this. And even Nate and I struggle sometimes when I feel like he's, maybe not recording everything on our Excel spreadsheet.
I definitely don't do that.
Or when he is just going over his individual budget. So we feel it too, maybe not to the same extent, but we do understand it. So first of all, you're doing an awesome job by keeping yourselves out of debt, besides the house and the car, and paying all your bills and making sure your credit cards are paid off each month. So kudos to you on that regard. But of course, there's a but. It sounds like you guys are maybe just breaking even each month after all those bill paying, or even worse, potentially dipping into your savings or crash fund for just occasional wants, essentially. And in other podcasts, we've talked about wants versus needs. And so wants would be anything as needish as a cell phone to as, trivial as maybe a new pair of shoes or something. So wants, some of them, sometimes they don't feel like a want. Sometimes it feels like a need, but they're usually just wants. So dipping into your crash fund or savings for these is never a good idea. Also, breaking even may mean you're getting to fulfill some of those momentary whims, like a expensive night out at a restaurant or a brand new dress or something. But it also means you're probably not going to meet any of your longer term goals, or at least not as many of them as you'd like to. So before we start diving into how you might approach this with your husband, we'll just start chatting about some of our saving strategies and what we do.
Okay, so as the husband figure in this relationship, I totally, and I'm also the spender, so I totally get the idea of money burning a hole in your pocket. But when I feel that need to spend stuff, that only comes from money that's not in our savings account. Our savings account, by definition, is money that is there with a purpose or a goal. And our express purpose for our savings account is our emergency fund. It's something that if something were to happen that we needed immediate money for, we could go into that, and it's for emergencies only. Our emergency fund is set up so that it covers 3 to 6 months worth of expenses, and that's a really good rule of thumb to follow for anybody. And basically, it's there for things that are an emergency or that we're saving up for large expenditures. Let's say we're going to go buy a car or do something else, or taxes. We put money into savings for that. But that's really all we use our savings account for. If something happens emergency-wise, our car breaks, a water heater blows, roof leaks, we have money to pay for it immediately, and we don't have to go into debt for it, which is the primary goal here. So this money was built up over years. It wasn't like something we just immediately had. It's something that took us a while to get to, and it doesn't get touched. There's no we could do this. It doesn't get touched.
And honestly, we built it up a long time ago. So we've had that 3 to 6 month's amount in there for years. And so honestly, I usually forget it's there. I just don't look at our savings account. I only look at checking. I don't even think of it as there. But I would be really happy when some expense pops up like Nate talked about, and we had that there to cover it. Because I mean, the thing is, yes, you can have that kind of laissez-faire, we'll figure it out type of attitude. But say you have a $15,000 expense that you have to pay for immediately, you might have to put that on a credit card, and then you're no longer going to be out of debt. Like you're going to be in debt. So to me, it's incredibly important to make sure you have that money just set aside, not touched. Don't even think about it anymore.
Yeah, and I don't know how unique we are in this situation, but our savings account is really just the emergency fund. It doesn't count for anything else, so we rarely even look at it because it's always the same number. When we open it up on our little app, it always shows the same number because we don't touch it. Really, the thing that fluctuates is our checking account. We keep most of our money in our checking, and at the end of every month, we pay off all of our bills, and then anything extra basically goes into the house. So that one builds up over the course of a month, and then deflates once we pay everything out, and just put that on repeat.
And one note I'll make, when we're talking about savings, we're talking about crash fund or just saving for a expense like a trip or a car. But we do have other savings. We put away 15% of our income into retirement each year. And we also put away $400 a month, up from $250 actually recently, into our son's college each month. So those are two priority things that don't even come into account. Like those things are taken out as if they were bills for us. So those, we don't even think about that. So just to go a little deeper here, we don't break even each month. We make sure we have stuff left over. And we're lucky to be in a position to be able to do that. Not everyone is, and I do understand that. But there is a part of it that is because of what we do. So we make it so that we don't break even each month. In other words, we set our budget up backwards almost. So for instance, one of our goals is to pay our house off in 15 years rather than the typical 30 years. So this is one of our longer term goals. So we make sure we have enough left over each month to put that extra amount on principal to make sure we're on track to pay off our house in 15 years. So we have that longer term goal that we're working towards. And that just means more to us than the instant gratification of whatever we want in the moment when something pops up on Amazon. So it's just a matter of agreeing on long term goals and having that as a reward and something in your head.
Absolutely. So now we're going to transition a little bit into how we think about this with your husband and how we would possibly approach it. The first thing is you're right. You cannot take away access to the bank account. As you said, that's unfair. And you two are in this together. Removing him from that equation is an absolute recipe for trouble and disaster. But you guys will go through this, and you need to make the decisions together and come up with a plan together. The big thing here is that he needs to have input along with you. You both need to come up with something together. If neither one of you are happy, that's probably a good plan. But we need to make sure that you're going through it together and that you stick to it together, because the only way this works is when you do it as a team. It's not an individual-based thing. So generally, we're going to start off our idea here with a conversation about goals with each other. What do we want to do with our money? What do we want to do with our lives? Not only like today or tomorrow, but down the road, way down the road. We set up all of our goals as short, medium, or long-term goals. Short-term goals are just a week to a month or two out in advance. Medium-term goals can be anywhere from like a year to 5 years, and long-term goals are like longer than that. So we go through. I understand the concerns here when he says we'll figure it out, because that could be a really big impact on your family. And that's how I'd approach this with them. Is like, if my wife came up to me and told me that I'm concerned about how we're spending and how that this could negatively impact our family, it scares me. That immediately puts me on notice that I'm doing something wrong. I need to change something, or I need to pay attention. Because if my wife ever says she's scared about what we're doing, that's a big red flag to me.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've seen, we have maybe smaller issues, but like, I've seen things work with Nate and things not work with Nate.
She's trained me, is what she's saying.
Well, if I approach it like, if I get freaked out, I can lash out quickly and, be like, you're never putting anything on the budget. What is wrong with you? It's ridiculous. You need to stop spending money, blah, blah, blah.
That's happened twice this month.
And so, yeah, I do that. And it's pretty easygoing, but I could see how someone else would freak out and close off, and that would just be it. Whereas if some of the times when I've been really nervous about how we've been budgeting and spending our money, I'll just sit down with them and say, look, we really need to chat about money. Like we worked out this budget together, and we're not sticking to it. We need to sit down and figure out where things are going wrong and make sure we're back on track. And that works a lot better. And we just sit down together and look at it and like agree to be careful. So, I mean, obviously having the we in the conversation when you're saying stuff, don't say, what are you doing? Or you haven't done this, or say we, make it about both of you and sit down and come up with a plan together. So.
Yeah, as Danielle said, this is a team approach. If half the team, because you guys are only two, so if one doesn't want to do something, the other one does, that's not the whole team in, so we can't do it. That goes for anything with money, even going out to dinner, because I love going out to dinner. Danielle, not so much. So if she says we're not going out, sorry, we're not going out. And sometimes she gives in and lets me do what I want. But again, if she says no, it's not like a control issue or anything like that. It's the team doesn't want to. The team hasn't decided that it's good for the team to do, so the team's not doing it. And that's really where we're at with things. That really influences where we're at with our short, mid, and long-term goals, because if we both agree to something, it allows you to much, much easier stick to a plan if you're both on board. If it's just half the team, the other half of the team's not going to listen. They're not going to be on board with those goals. They're going to see it as kind of a weight on them instead of something that should be uplifting and fun, because once you really make that money work for you, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, you have to make sure they feel just as much as in control as what you do. And, you're right. They may never have the same excitement. I'm always pretty excited about budgeting and money, and Nate is too usually, but he's probably slightly lower than me, and you'll never be the same. And that's okay. That's not the point. The point is that money is an integral part of life, the way that religion may be for some, the way that kids are if you have kids, like that. It's integral to your relationship and to life. So it's something you just have to talk about and agree on in some capacity. So there's really no alternatives to it. So you're doing the right thing by thinking about this. So, going back to what we were saying about goals, I again would say set up a list of goals together. That can be fun. I mean, if you start to think about what do we want in 20 years? Do we want to retire early? Do we want to be able to travel with our kids each year? Do we want to pay the house off early? Maybe you really want to buy a beach house someday. These are great long-term goals to just think through, write down, and just get excited about, and then crunch some basic numbers. Look at your budget and see, if you are breaking even, is that getting you to those goals? And I would venture to guess that it probably isn't. So, see if you guys can work on focusing in on those goals and working backwards with budgeting to make sure you're going to be able to reach them. And hopefully that could make him feel like there's a purpose to skipping out on the new item that he wants to buy that month, whatever it may be. So that he doesn't feel like he's just missing out on that thing. He's actually doing it for a reason. He's not buying that for a reason. So hopefully that helps. And, one final thing, I would say one thing that really, really helped us early on in budgeting, and this was probably like in our first couple years,
probably first couple months. Yeah, probably first couple months.
We didn't have individual budgets at all. We just had combined going out, a combined whatever. And it was hard because I'd feel like, well, you're spending all your money or you're spending all of our money on beer or a new computer or whatever it may be. And it just wouldn't feel fair to me all the time. And so instead we separated it. We each gave ourselves individual budgets. So I have $200 a month to spend and he does. And that's in our budget already. So we're still meeting our long-term goals. But that money is hands off. So like whatever he wants to spend it on, he gets to spend it on. And whatever I want to, I get to. And that allows us to have some control over our own spending while still getting to together goals.
Absolutely. I think that's been a really big change and for the better on our budget. Of all the changes we've made over the years, I think setting an individual budget for each of us and just allowing that to work and just whatever you want to spend it on, go ahead. I think that's really helped us out in being able to make sure that we've met our goals and that we each still feel like we have control over our areas of the budget and we can do what we want, but not out of the realm of what we've already agreed upon.
Yeah. So, hopefully some of this helps. I know we probably went all over the place a little bit, but it got us thinking, and it's a really good discussion, and I hope it helps you guys out.
Yeah, thanks so much. If you guys have any questions, you can go to budgetcouple.com, click on that contact link at the top, and it'll take you to a form that you can fill out, and that goes directly to my inbox. For those of you who have sent stuff in, thank you. We will be getting to you. We have a little bit of a backlog right now, but we will be getting to you, and we greatly appreciate the time and effort you put into your questions, because we really makes us think about our budget, and we love being able to look into this stuff and kind of see what we've done or what we would do in your situation. So that's going to wrap it up for today. Thanks again so much. We appreciate your time, and have a wonderful rest of your day, night, or whatever you're doing listening to this.
Bye, guys. See you next time.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Budget Couple Podcast with your hosts, Nate and Danielle. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit budgetcouple.com. Make sure to check out the next episode of the Budget Couple Podcast, where we'll talk more about life, family, and how to afford it. We'll catch you next time.